Hello, friends. Welcome to the Bincast, where small talk comes to die. I am with my friend Jared. Jared is probably the first one on the podcast with whom I've actually met in person. So far, I've interviewed a few folks already, but Jared is the first one who's actually met me in person. In fact, Jared, welcome to the Bincast. Tell our listening audience how we met, if you would.
Okay, yeah, for sure. Um, we've met in an Uber twice. You were my driver within the span of like a month.
Yep.
Yeah, and it was during a pretty influential period of my life where I needed someone to speak to about what I was going through. So it was really cool like running into you when we met.
It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And it's rare in a city that we live in together of a
Yeah.
mil 1.3 million, right?
Yeah, quite a bit.
So the odds to get matched up that way again was pretty awesome. And it's the kind of like it'd be great to hang out again because like we just hit it off, didn't we?
Oh yeah, big time.
That's awesome. So again, just for the listening audience here, the basic premise of the podcast I was just sharing with Jared before he came online was that we don't have an agenda. In fact, I start off with a blank slate, and then I just start writing notes along the way here as we enjoy conversation. My desire is to get to know Jared a little bit better. I already know quite a bit of Jared just because we've had a chance to interact and have a good rapport in the midst of my Uber rides with him. But this is a chance for you guys who are watching to get to know Jared, and in the meantime, we're going to enjoy a fantastic time together. And so, thank you, Jared, for being on the Bincast today.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
So, let me start off by asking a little bit about yourself. Tell my listening audience, because they're from all over the world, pertinent things about yourself, like what season of life you're in, how old you are, where you live, where you're working your way towards, what's on your forecast, and yes, things that are important to you.
Okay. So I'm 23 years old. I have about 12 classes left in my business degree right now. I'm majoring in finance. Um, right now it's pretty hard taking school online because of COVID, but
Mhm.
it's definitely an adjustment. But I'm liking the challenge so far. Um, one of my big passions is raving. I'm really into electronic music, so I go to lots of concerts and festivals.
Yeah,
Yeah, so like I would say that's probably one of the most important things in my life. It's been a big part of like discovering myself as a person.
yep,
Yeah, it's a very like loving and accepting scene. It's
yep.
kind of like made of outcasts, so like no one is really judgmental.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Hmm.
And you always lived here in Calgary, or are you
Yeah,
from another
born and
state?
raised. No,
Born
I'm
and
born and
raised.
raised. Yeah, I don't think I'll ever be leaving.
A really interesting dynamic that a lot of my listeners may not know is here in Calgary, uniquely, like whenever I meet someone who is originally from Calgary, born here in Calgary, they usually use that line. All of them do. Born and raised.
Really? That's
I'm not
funny.
sure if that's a uniquely Calgary thing or not, but every one of them, it's almost like a mantra. Born and raised, and it's like interesting. I've never seen that elsewhere.
Yeah, the fact that you say that, I've noticed that quite a bit actually.
Yeah, yeah. Um, are you one of many siblings, or are you an only child?
Only child. Yeah.
Only child, okay. What's it like being an only child? I don't know because I am the oldest of six kids.
Um, like as a kid, I like that's it is true. You do get kind of spoiled by your parents. Like you are like the only one receiving love.
Yeah.
But it did teach me to like be able to like share with my friends and like, it's like I was very fortunate from the life my parents gave me, but
Hmm.
yeah, and since I didn't have any siblings, like a lot of my connections, my friendships are like they mean a lot more to me, I think, than the average person. So like
Hmm.
the bond with me and my friends is almost like a brotherhood or like sisterhood
Yeah.
sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm guessing these are like long-term friendships as well.
Yeah, I have many friends spanning from like 5 years to 10 years long in our
Yeah.
friendships. Yeah.
Something I've noticed just because I have been through my well, teen years, of course, but into university for many years, and then even
Hmm.
after the stay into the workforce and so on. Something I've noticed by pattern, it seems, is that a lot of really strong friendships develop in university years. Like those are the lifelong friends. So in high school, maybe even before high school, you've got your best friends and your clique that you hang out. But it seems to me like after they graduate from high school and move on, those
Yeah.
sort of dissolve or get looser. But then the friendships that are made in university seem to be like really rock solid in that they stay in effect for many years after that. Do you find the same sort of experience on your end, or is yours somewhat different?
I would say somewhat different. Um,
Yeah.
I have a big group of friends. All started being friends in like elementary and junior high, all the
Okay.
way through high school, and we're all still very much connected and see each other like on a weekly or at least a monthly basis. And
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I feel very fortunate to have such a like cohesive group that I've like lived my whole like childhood and even adult lifehood with.
Yeah. Yeah.
But probably like 2 or 3 years ago, I kind of decided to branch off from my old friend group. I
Okay.
needed to kind of discover myself, and that's when I really dove into like the EDM scene in Calgary,
Mhm.
where I was probably before that I was like stuck in a small group of like maybe 20 people. Like that was really my core friend group. But then
Yeah.
I was very introverted too when because I was just so comfortable with my core friend group. But
Mhm.
when I decided to like branch out and start making new friends in this EDM scene in Calgary, like it really broke me out of my shell and I became extroverted, and I love meeting new people, making new connections.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
When you were in your former community that you were somewhat introvertish in, what was
Yeah.
the thing that held you guys together? What kind of interests did you guys kind of resonate with strongly that you're like, this is our jam?
Um like with the guys, it might have just been like gaming really brought us together, and
Yeah,
sports as well. Just
yeah,
hanging out after school and such, and like
yeah,
kind of just grew up doing everything together, like skateboarding, playing soccer, basketball.
yeah,
Then as we got older, going out to bars and partying together and just hanging out at each other's houses. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Which sports did you guys really focus on or enjoy the most?
Um, I think we played quite a bit of basketball and
Yeah,
football.
yeah,
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah.
And gaming, are you still gaming to
Oh
this
yeah,
day?
big
You are
time.
big. I
Yeah.
was gonna say because you were saying about how EDM is like huge for you right now, and just so that we can break it down for those who are unfamiliar with acronyms, what does EDM stand for?
Electronic dance music.
There we go. Okay,
Yeah, it's
electronic.
kind of the umbrella term because there is probably hundreds of genres of EDM music, but that's kind of the main term to branch it all together.
Gotcha, gotcha.
Yeah.
Um, you're mentioning something about discovering yourself or seeing the need to discover yourself at some point in the way.
Hmm.
What sort of things were you noticing or observing in your life at that moment that said, there's a big world out there that like, yeah, what was the catalyst that sort of got you into that season of, I wonder what else there is that I'm missing out on?
I think I kind of knew I was just like spinning tires, like
Mm,
just hanging out with my same friend group and not like doing things without them. So like I guess my personality was almost like more like formed to like being friends with them, and like they were so important in my life, but I never got the chance to experience just being myself.
hmm.
Well, and I think the where I really started to discover myself, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I went to a music festival across the country alone. So my
Hmm.
girlfriend at the time broke up with me about 2 weeks before the music festival, and I was going for my birthday. And my dad said I could cancel the flights and just not go. Like he'd understand. He's like, you don't
Hmm.
need to. This is when I was introverted at the time, and I just decided, screw it. I'm gonna go fly across the country, go to this festival of 40,000 people. I don't know anyone.
Yeah.
And a week before the music festival, I was on this app called Radiate, and it's kind of like Tinder, but
Okay.
not just you're looking for friendships. It's not just relationships, and you
Mm-hmm.
connect with other people in the EDM scene. And
Mm-hmm.
so this group of 20-year-olds contacted me, and they'd seen that I was going alone, and they invited me to stay with them for the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
So this is it's crazy. Like I've never met these people. I was just kind of trusted them over the internet, sent them like
Mm-hmm.
$300 for an Airbnb over
Yeah.
e-transfer, flew
Yeah.
across the country, met these people, and they kind of like adopted me as their like an orphan into their group. And that's where like I really there was no expectations in my head of who I had to be. I was just myself.
Yeah.
And that's what really it really broke me out of my shell, like doing that. And like feeling like everyone in this group of people, they all love me a lot and express that, and like I think that raised my confidence a lot as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and like thinking back to it now, it's like I don't think I could do that again. Like just go up, fly across the country, and go to a music festival with random people. I'm like, how did I do that when I was so introverted? Yeah.
That was a huge impact on your life, though. It seems like it still is paying dividends in essence.
Oh yeah, definitely, big time.
That's
One of the like
amazing.
most profound things in my life I'd ever done.
This group of people that adopted you, were they in
Mhm.
the same age group as you, or were they older than you?
Most of them were around my age, from like 20 to
Yeah.
22, and then there was a few people that were like 28, 29.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did they have like an existing chemistry beforehand, or was it a new thing for them where they're like, we've never met each other, but let's all just jam together?
They all kind of knew each other for the last like 6 months, year. They were all kind of friends and had
Oh,
raved together.
yeah.
Yeah.
And when you got into like when you were invited into this already knit group,
Yeah.
it's beautiful to hear how they were already like open to making you feel welcome.
Oh, big
Um,
time.
yeah, yeah. It sounds like it wasn't an intentional sort of we're gonna take you under our wing, but it sounds something more like a hey, we're gonna do life together and you're gonna be made to feel welcome. Is that how the dynamic went for you, or was it something different that you were sensing that made this really amazing?
Well, like how they like accepted me into their group.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, well, I'd made a post on that app. This I was trying to meet up with new groups of people, and like I said in my bio, I was going alone from across the country, and they
Mhm.
needed one more person for their Airbnb, and they
Yeah,
were kind of just searching for someone on that app to fill the spot. And I guess they told me that from viewing my pictures and seeing my bio that they thought I was approachable and
yeah,
trusting. So
yeah.
yeah, they one of the girls who organized it, she called me and did like a phone interview for 10 minutes just to like background check, make sure
Wow.
I was
Okay.
okay. Yeah.
Ah. And of course, you're, I'm guessing, feeling nervous going and meeting this group.
Oh yeah, like my heart was racing a million times.
What was your main concern as you're going into the unknown?
Just like taking an Uber from the airport to this random Airbnb to meet 10 people I don't know. It's crazy. It's all like you know anyone. It's like, hey, I'm
Yep.
Jarod, that guy from the internet. Like
You
yeah.
know, I think I just heard the next t-shirt logo that's going to come out on, hey, I'm Jared from the internet.
That would be great.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's remarkable. And you said something else that was really interesting, Jared. You said today you don't think you would do that again, but at that moment when you made that decision to do this very uncharacteristic thing to yourself,
Mhm.
you're like, I'm going for it. Your dad said, hey, you don't have to. You're like, I'm locking myself in.
Yeah. I I don't know. I think it was something in my soul. It's just like telling me I need to like take this leap of faith. And like
And you were
I'm a
saying,
pretty impulsive person, so like even
yeah,
when I was introverted, I do impulsive things. So I think it was just kind of the seed that was gonna sprout. It wanted to flourish there.
And you're in that zone in life where you're saying you wanted to discover yourself and learn more about what it is that makes you you, not just one expression that you've experienced for the last however many years in your
Yeah,
present
exactly.
circumstances.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Now, what has changed between that time when you said, I want to discover myself, and since then you've experienced some huge things that have
Mhm.
influenced your life in a different way that you didn't see beforehand, right?
Yeah.
Would you say then that now you aren't really in that season of trying to discover yourself, or that looks different now?
I'm still discovering myself on a daily basis. Like
Mm,
I've been reading a lot of books about like dissolving the ego and being more present with myself and like
okay.
bringing down the chatter of like that voice in your head, just kind of
Mm,
being more like in the moment
yeah.
and just being more carefree, not worrying about the past, not worrying about the future.
Which entails that you're gaining a greater sensitivity to how you are talking to yourself and trying to
Hmm.
rewrite the narrative in your mind. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I'm trying to get rid of bad habits and just being more aware of how I am and not reacting based on my emotions and trying to be more reacting on how I feel actually.
It almost sounds like you're saying you're trying to undo some conditioning that you grew up with, maybe in the
Hmm.
societal context you're in. What are
Yeah.
some of those things that you're trying to address and say, I wonder if there's another way we could be processing or thinking about these things that just seem like normal because we never think about it?
Hmm. It's probably like defense mechanisms my brain had kind of formed throughout life, trying to protect itself, and it's like
Mm,
this. Yeah, I don't know. It's just being more aware of like how I react in situations.
yeah.
It's been helping a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. I like where you're presently trying to like explore this is like this is very intriguing for me.
Hmm.
When did this start back when you met this new group, or did it start somewhere in the evolution of your new experiences in life? Like, how did this all come to be on your radar? Because it's not on everyone's radar. Most people just kind of coast through
Hmm.
life, perhaps in ignorance, right? How
Hmm.
did it become something that you're like, I want to devote time to this? So it's not only about thinking about it, but even reading about it and trying to gain more understanding. I mean, you talk about dissolving the ego. That's quite a phrase there. Like,
Yeah. So I'm pretty into taking psychedelics like LSD or DMT. So taking those drugs has really opened up my mind to like the constructs that my ego has created
mm-hmm.
and broken down like this broken down the like that image I had of myself and just really realizing in essence like who I am as a person, you know.
Mm-hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking about my listening audience. For
Yeah.
those who are like, this sounds intriguing, but I'm not sure because I don't have a helpful guide going forward.
Yeah.
What's some feedback you'd give them if they're interested in kind of following the same way, saying, man, what Jared is saying resonates with me. I just don't know how to start from point A going forward because I have no idea what
Hmm.
to look out for, how to engage or involve
Yeah.
myself in safe places, safe voices. What would you say to those individuals?
um One thing I would say, like psychedelics aren't for everyone, but
Mm,
they're a great tool if you use them the right way. They can really transform your mind for the
mm,
better and permanently.
mm,
But then you need to be safe with taking them. So like you need to be testing your drugs and you need to have like a trip sitter with you, someone who is sober to keep you grounded in case something bad goes happen.
mm,
And knowing that less is more, like you don't need to take a lot and having like a purpose when you're taking these drugs
mm,
and knowing that it's not like I honestly don't think you need to take psychedelics to discover on how to dissolve your ego. It's just
mm,
like kind of a one of the ways you can like a method to figuring that out, but like other ways could be like meditation, I think is
mm,
probably a good way of doing that, and I'm sure
mm.
there's other methods as well.
Cool.
Hmm.
To you, what is the ego, and why are you on a mission to try and dissolve your ego?
The ego to me is like it's like what it's like your mind like is creates this like identity of yourself, and like your mind like thinks like what do people think of you, and like what what you're expected to be like, and like you're trying to like play a role or something in society, and you're
Mm-hmm.
just like it's that voice in your head where you're constantly like, I don't know, worrying and over analyzing things like, am I good enough, am I doing the right things, is how is this person going to think of how I'm acting. And
Mm-hmm.
I think the ego is it's almost like a disease, like that's like it can actually like ruin people. You get so entrapped in your ego.
Mm-hmm.
So just slowly like breaking down my ego over the last few years, it's like really made me realize how like trapped I was in my own head, and I was
Mm-hmm.
so restricted to new ideas and restricted to like actually enjoying life.
Do you think we're born with an ego, or does it develop socially?
I think it I think this I think language has something
Yeah.
to do with the ego. So like this like the words like me, myself, and like words like I, and it's like my, like those really like start developing your ego at an early age.
Okay.
Yeah, so like I think that's why it's so hard to actually break down your ego, because it's
Mm.
kind of created from the day you're born almost.
I'll come back to this idea of the
Hmm.
ego in your references, like from your vantage point, as you see the world through your experiences. What would you say
Yeah.
is the biggest world, like the biggest um, human struggle we have that we need to address?
Yeah, I would say it's probably like the biggest problem with like humanity is the ego just controlling people. It's like you're
Mm.
like not even in control of your own body. You're letting this constructed image of yourself run your life. And it's like I think if you're the more entrapped you are in your ego, and like the more you let your ego run your life, like the more unhappy you're gonna be. So I think
Mm-hmm.
people who are happier and more free are
Hmm.
not as entrapped by their ego than other people.
Cool. Your group of friends that you spend time with the most,
Hmm.
would you say this is one of the things that is on all your collective radar as far as a community, or is this more something you're experiencing on your own and you're finding people along the way that are on this wavelength?
Yeah, I've probably for the last like year I've been trying to align myself with people who are more like-minded with me, and
Mm-hmm.
doing that is like I think helped a lot, because I think
Mm-hmm.
who you surround yourself around is really going to create who you are. Like it's a big
Mm-hmm.
influence.
Sure.
So yeah, I like surrounding myself with people who are positive and are always trying to grow themselves and have aspirations in their life. And I think those are always good influences on your own lives. Like you can all benefit each other that way.
Sure enough. Yeah. From your experience, what does these kind of friendships and connections that are focused on getting to, well, dissolving the ego, working
Mhm.
on self and stuff. What does that interaction in this community of friendships look like that is different from those who may not be on the same radar?
I feel very more connected to these people. It's like our bond is very very deep, and like I could go for several months, or even like it probably could be years where I wouldn't talk to this person, and it
Mm-hmm.
our friendship relationship wouldn't have changed at all. We would hit it back on like the same dot from when we were before. Like, and I don't know if that is like for everyone, honestly. Like,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So you're very specific in who you open up that way, and especially in this whole realm of being vulnerable and saying, here's how I'm assessing what's going on internal.
Yeah.
Okay. Biggest influences in life for you, Jared. Who are they and why?
I would say my two biggest influences would probably
Yeah,
be my parents.
yeah,
Like I attest a big reason of who I am is because of them and the way they raised me in my life.
yeah, yeah. That is really significant. I know you and I have had conversations. I'm going to rehash our private conversations in my
Yeah,
Uber just for the
yeah, for sure.
benefit of my listeners again. Most, I would suggest, most, no, try not to be, yeah, I would say most, there are many who struggle in relation to their relationships with their parents, for example, because who you are at home is really a significant part of like what's really going on under the radar.
Hmm.
And I would suggest that maybe there's an element of hypocrisy that many are sort of disillusioned by, where it's more like do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. And so at some point there seems to be a parting of resonance or engagement with parents for the most part.
Yeah.
What was it in your experience that made that a difference dynamic where to this day you're saying, I mean, your parents aren't in the room with you, I'm
Hmm.
guessing,
No.
and yet you're just voluntarily saying, actually, these are the heavy hitters by way of influence in my life. Why? What do they do?
They taught me how to be like a kind and caring individual who's respectful, and they never pushed me to do things that I didn't want to do. Like they would always let me go at my own pace,
Yeah.
and they'd always be proud of me no matter what. They would
Hmm.
never make me feel disappointed or ashamed of who I was. I
Yeah.
was always able to like express myself, and I was always open with them. And like there's honestly nothing I hold back from in my own life for what I tell them. Like I don't feel any
Wow.
fear. Yeah.
That's amazing. Okay, so you feel safe enough to actually process with your parents your experiences, whereas most people in your age would be like, I'm gonna keep that away from my parents because I don't want to get in trouble or whatever else, right?
Yeah.
I gotta dig more, man. Like I'm thinking of the parents who are watching and they're thinking, I would like that destination with my kids.
Hmm.
Sort of deconstruct for us what your parents did to make that safe for you though.
Hmm. That's a good question. I'm trying to think.
That's okay. Take your time. There's no rush here.
Yeah. Like I could always talk to my parents when I was like, if I was ever feeling sad or if I was mad about something or something
Hmm.
was going on in my life. I could always talk to my parents about it from an early age, and I never really was like holding back
Hmm.
anything. I felt very comfortable talking to them, and they're always very loving with me. So
Okay. Good. Let me just pause you
yeah.
there. 'Cause I'm going to
Mhm.
unravel this one a little bit more here. So time out for a sec. You felt safe going and talking to them. So I'm thinking in most people's experience, when they try to be vulnerable with their parents, for example,
Yeah.
there is usually a response of how could you, or that kind of thing. How do they respond in a consistent way that encourage you to be more open and honest with them about anything and everything that you're going through? What was different from that response or like intimidating response? How did they respond specifically that they're like, that made you feel that was a good experience, and I don't feel like I'm beat down or intimidated or made to feel less than.
They would always like obviously they'd give me insight into situations I had if I was doing something wrong, or maybe I acted in a mean way to someone or something. They would always give me their insight into the situation and not like shame me for any bad behavior, but try and push me in a better direction.
Okay.
And ever since like a young age, I was always able to express myself. I was always dressing the way I wanted and
Yeah.
doing whatever I kind of wanted. Like I wasn't constricted on myself. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. And would you say that for the most part, you've grown up in an environment where you didn't get disillusioned by your parents?
Yeah, definitely not.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I wish more of our experiences were so. Unfortunately, they're not, and that's why I'm just putting screws to you to say, tell us more. Because again, like,
Yeah.
I can't help but imagine people would love that, you know? There are girls that I'm talking to today, Jared, who
Yeah.
are broken because their dads, yeah, it's not a good situation there. But here's the thing,
Mhm.
they desire that. There's guys who are wishing that their dads could be more accessible emotionally, and they don't have that, right? And so they're walking away with scars as a result, right? And so hearing
Yeah.
your kind of experience is really beautiful. Yeah, so that's amazing. Um when you are going through your teen years, you're 23 years old now, but through
Hmm.
your teen years, there's usually that expectation or anticipation. It seems that teen years are your rebellious years. Did you have that in your context, or did your parents sort of make that impossible because of the way they were parenting you?
No, I was definitely a delinquent child, very rebellious. Like as soon as junior high hit, grade seven, I was kind of trying to test the limits and break all the rules possible. I
Hmm.
definitely made it stressful for my parents
Okay.
while I was a teenager.
And during that season, you still felt that sense of I can tell them anything and everything.
I don't know, maybe like that was when junior high hits, it's kind of like you're starting to discover yourself. Like it's
Sure enough. Yeah.
a more discovery phase, and I was kind of like a little shithead and always a class clown sort of thing, getting in trouble with the teachers and such. So
Yeah.
I didn't really like conforming to like society's expectations. I don't really know why ever since
Even
like day
as an
one.
introvert, even as an
Yeah.
introvert at the time.
Yeah.
Interesting. What was the age you transitioned to being an extrovert from an introvert? When was that
That
experience
would
that you went
be
on to speak?
when I turned 21, when I had that experience where I went to that music festival alone.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple of years ago. Cool.
Hmm.
All right. So now, let me just shift gears a little bit.
Yeah.
Finance, you said. Why finance? Why are you interested in heading towards finance?
Well, I went into a business degree at SAIT, and they let you take classes through all the majors, so you can kind of figure out what you like the most. And I really like the aspect of dealing with people's finances and the whole aspect of money.
Yeah.
And my dad's a independent insurance broker, so my whole life I've kind of been learning that side of the industry from him.
Mm-hmm.
So it just kind of seemed like the perfect route to go.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So you know what you're getting into because you've seen all your life your dad in his at work.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think I'll end up using my degree for like the exact profession it wants me to. It's really tailored to becoming a financial planner. I
Okay.
take a lot of certification courses to becoming a financial planner, but
Mhm.
I didn't really I kind of got swayed off the whole banking side of the industry in Canada after I heard of all these unethical things happening in the industry and a few years ago with all the
Mhm.
shady things happening with the banks. And then I kind of realized that the degree is not, it doesn't have to be like you have to get a job in that exact industry that you're taking that degree in. It's this degree has like been the toughest thing I've ever decided to do. And it's really
Really?
shaped myself into becoming a better learner and like facing hard challenges and overcoming them. Like I would not trade it for anything else in the world, honestly.
It almost sounds like you're like rising up to the challenge and saying, "Bring it on," even though this is like, yikes.
Yeah, I was a like a 60s to 70s student in high school, so going into post secondary, I knew it was going to be very challenging, and I
Yeah,
always knew I was smart, and my parents always told me, and other people, they're like, "You're so smart," but my grades never showed it.
reflected it. Yeah.
Yeah, and that might be a bit because of I have ADHD, so I'm not
Okay.
very I don't it's hard for me to pay attention to things I don't really care about. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's amazing that you're sitting so still in an hour-long interview. Jeez, my friend. Uh, um, for one who's not in the banking world, what was it that turned you off? You're saying there's a lot of shady stuff. You were thinking that was perhaps an option once upon a time, but now you're like, hell no, I'm not being a part of that. What was it that turned you off? Like, for example, I remember when I was first in business,
Yeah.
man, there's a couple of experiences that I had. One time I was working at a grocery store, and I remember this one guy who owned a whole chain of restaurants. He came to me and said, I want to market your smile. You've got an amazing smile. I said, well, thank you for the compliment, but no, thank you to the offer because I want to give my smile away for free. That's my jam. I remember when I
Hmm.
was they were trying to get me into management for grocery stores, and by that time I'd been turned off by business because I didn't like the idea that the entity, this non-living entity,
Hmm.
its health is more important than the real life people who are working and just paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. That was at that time. It's a little bit different now, and so those were the things back then that sort of turned me off to business per
Hmm.
se. What is it that you are seeing in the evolution of business practices and the banking side that you're like, my conviction still allow me to go there?
With the banking side, it came out like 2 years ago approximately.
Mm,
The like financial planners were forced by the banks to like upsell the clients to like put them in products that weren't fitting their needs. So they were upselling them to get higher commissions to
okay.
benefit themselves, and they were like putting unauthorized transactions on the clients' accounts and taking advantage of old people. And hearing that there's this like these crazy expectations to meet quota every like 3 months, and if you don't meet quota, you will get fired basically. So it this sounded like very like high stress job that
Yeah.
in my opinion wouldn't be rewarding, and I I wouldn't want to be taking advantage of people and doing unethical practices. So it's kind of
Gotcha.
turned me off of it. Yeah.
Okay, so you're turned off towards that pathway, and you said
Hmm.
you're instead shifted to a different one. Tell me more about this new pathway that you're pursuing, even though it's harder, it's more challenging. And what was it inside this new pathway that really resonates with you that you're like, this is where I'm gonna find my purpose to contribute.
With the different career choice like I want to make.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I decided I want to work for my dad's company and one day take it over.
Yeah.
He's an independent insurance broker, and he acts as like an intermediary between the business and the insurance company. So
Hmm.
companies offer health and dental group benefit plans to their employees as benefits. And
Hmm.
so instead of directly going to the insurance carrier themselves, they go through my dad, and he can go to like all 15 different insurance companies to get the best rates. And with the business he's in, it's all about servicing your clients and like the relationships with your clients.
Hmm.
So over the last 2 years, I've been a ticket promoter in the EDM scene, selling concert tickets.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and I started when I came back from that music festival, and I had just broken out of my shell. I had no one to sell tickets to, and fast forward like 2 years later, I became one of the top promoters in the city. So I
Wow.
just excelled on my relationship building and making connections, and that's when it really resonated with me that I know I could do what my dad does for a living.
Sure.
And I I've worked for him some summers, and having that father son kind of business relationship in the business world, it's an awesome thing. And yeah.
Personality wise, just gotta ask,
Yeah.
is your dad like really chill?
Yeah, he's really chill. He's like honestly one of my best friends.
Again, something so foreign to many of our ears,
Hmm.
but amazing. That's so
Yeah.
cool. Okay, talk to me about conviction in the business world and how you want to hang on to, like you mentioned something that he said, the banks weren't
Hmm.
dealing ethically or yeah, based on your convictions. How are you pursuing, like, at what point do you draw the line and say this is stepping over the line, regardless of what kind of financial outcome or benefit business wise, economically, I refuse
Hmm.
to go there? What does that look like for you?
Well, for me, I just even on my own relations as a person, I never want to take advantage of someone for my own personal gain.
Mm-hmm.
Like I I don't know, I'm very like very kind soul. I'm not trying to like cut corners, and I'm not
Mm-hmm.
trying to benefit myself by bringing others down.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that would be myself as a businessman in the business world. Nothing would change for me, honestly, and I think that would be beneficial because what my dad does in this game of selling insurance, it is all about relationship building and breaking down relationships with other brokers so you can get their business. So I think I'm a very personable person that people can
Mm-hmm.
trust. So I
Sure.
honestly believe I will excel in it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very cool. It was interesting as you're talking about your convictions there. I'm not sure if the camera just angled, but I can see the lights kind of shining. And from
Oh,
my vantage point, it's like this angelic host shining as you're telling your convictions. Here's how I won't be sold, I won't be bought.
that's awesome.
That's brilliant. Uh, um, you're in the EDM world. You
Yes.
enjoy going to raves. How often do you get to go?
Well, right now, because of COVID, it's been like no raves, obviously,
That's got to be
because of
tough.
the health restrictions. But before COVID, it was like 1 to 2 times a weekend I'd be going out to a rave, and
Okay.
probably going to like 7 to 10 music festivals a year.
Yeah, yeah. And the
Yeah.
music festivals are much larger, I'm guessing, in
Oh
scope.
yeah, from 5,000 to like 45,000 people.
And there must be like describe the energy in that setting. Yeah.
There's so much like love and happiness in the crowds there. Like you can be completely sober, and it's like some other you were like resonating with the energy of like everyone else there. Everyone is so like one with the music. It's like
Mm, hmm.
there's nothing else like it, honestly.
It sounds, yeah, it sounds amazing. The follow-up question to that is,
Hmm.
what kind of misconceptions do you face in that community and you yourself personally because of your participation in it? I know
I
some
think
people hear the word rave
yeah,
and they'll be like already like jumping to conclusions. Yeah, talk a
yeah.
little bit
I think
about
some
that.
people think that the EDM scene is just all about drugs.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's a stigma behind that, like because raves, I guess, started underground and they were kind of illegal, and that was a place where people did drugs. And still to this day, obviously, at raves and festivals, drugs are used probably more than any other genre of music. But
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
yeah, I don't know. It's definitely a bigger stigma than how it actually is there. Most people are pretty safe with their drug use, and people actually use in moderation, and like lots of people go sober to shows. And
Mm-hmm.
I think really the longer you are in the EDM scene, the more you see that it's not about the drugs, it's about the music and the passion behind the music.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's experience that elements together, right?
Hmm.
Um, in reference to the ego, I was just thinking about the ego again here.
Yeah.
Something I'd love to hear your insights on is okay, you're on a mission to try and diminish. I think you said, dis- uh, yeah, discover oneself, dissolving ego, diminish,
Yes.
dissolve,
Yeah.
dissolving the ego.
Yeah.
You described for me the nuance or that line where it's okay. There's ego, and then there's appropriate expressions of self-love.
Hmm.
How do you figure out which one is which?
I think you have to go through experiences of like having like going through relationships and friendships with
Yeah.
people for years. Like you think they're your best friends for years, and then when you think when you least expect it, like their true colors are shown, and you come to your senses and see, oh well, maybe I was giving my love to the wrong people, giving my energy to the wrong people who weren't reciprocating it. So I think there's like a lot of energy drainers in this world. They'll take advantage of you for their own gain, and
Mm-hmm.
yeah, you need to be aware of who you're giving your energy to. I think that's really important.
Okay. Um, Expressions of insecurities that we have, is that a part of that ego that is unhelpful or something else?
No, yeah, no, I think insecurities would be about the ego. It's like not you're not thinking you're good enough. You're worried about what other people think about you. And
Mm-hmm.
I think also social media has made this like amplified that times a million. Honestly, it seems like a crisis right now. People like constantly comparing each other on social media and seeing who's getting more views, who looks like they have a happier life. And
Mm.
yeah, social media, there's a lot of good to it, but there's a lot of negatives, I think.
Now, I've seen some of your pictures on your Instagram because we're
Yeah.
friends there. Yeah, and I
Hmm.
enjoy watching you amongst your friends and so on.
Thank you.
How, like, do you feel the pressure on your end to play that game as well, that most are struggling with, and saying, how do I present myself in a way that it looks like I'm having the best of times, but I'm just
Hmm.
still trying to figure out what's going on?
For me, my big change with social media happened when Instagram took off the likes. So you can't see how many likes other people get. So
Mhm.
once they took that feature off, I like when I was scrolling through Instagram feed, I wouldn't see how many people liked a photo. I would just like it based on how I liked the photo. And I noticed myself doing this and I was like, wow. And then I stopped caring about my own likes because no one could see them. So I was like, who
Yeah.
cares who's liking my photos? Like,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what time I posted, what day I posted. I'm just gonna post what I want to post, like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
And it seems like with the diminishing or the dissolving of the ego, it seems like you're trying to care more about what you're processing internally as opposed to what
Hmm.
people are saying externally. Have you, like, are you still in the midst of struggling with peer pressure or not so much?
I think I still deal with that because I'm still entrapped in the whole social media life, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like a learning process, day to day, week by week, month to month. Sometimes I'm doing better on not caring about what others think, but then I realize like, oh, why am I caring about what this person thinks about me? I need to take a step back and realize where I'm actually trying to go with my life. I don't think progressing as a person is only upwards. I think you'll go
Yeah.
downwards sometimes too, and that's
Yeah.
natural and normal.
Mhm. Yeah. What are some of the major breakthroughs you've made in yourself as a person? I'm asking you to toot your horn a little bit about yourself. So
Hmm.
yeah, I'm just bachelor. But what are some of those significant, man, this was huge and amazing for me, that you've experienced in your evolution as a person, as you who you are, Jared, and becoming into?
Hmm. Like events that have happened in my life that have impacted me, where I was like,
The events may have been a part of it, but like, say, for example, for me,
mhm,
a lot of people don't believe, Jared, that I used to be a violent person, a very angry person when I was younger. Um, yeah, my brothers know it, but no one else really knew it. Um, and just that process that I went through to coming to acknowledge, crap, I have a problem with anger, and now I got to like do something about it. And then that whole series of years that I had to work on in a micro terms,
mhm,
shifting to become something different, so that I'm not that angry, raging person internally, right? Or other painful things along the way where I'm like, here, I was once over here, but here's where I transitioned to in my evolution to something of a better version of myself, right? That's, I think, what I'm trying to go for there. Yeah. What have you experienced by way of those triumphs where you're like, I was once over here, but here's where I'm so happy being now, but here's the process that it took to get me over here.
huh. Trying to think where to begin. I honestly don't. I don't know exactly what to say. It's
Okay.
hard to say.
Now, for you, is it hard to say because you're not used to talking about the good things about yourself, or it's just hard to like remember or reference things that you've gone through in your evolution?
I think it's just because I don't talk about it too often to like
Gotcha.
someone who doesn't know me too well in like a grand
I totally hear
bigger
you.
scheme of things. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I think it would like I've had lots of problems in my friendships where big fights have happened and where I've been too emotional and overreacted, and
Hmm.
taking a step back and figuring out how I acted wrong and how I could react in a better sense the next time.
Yeah.
That has been a big part to like my growth. And
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
know I'm not perfect, and it's like when I screw up, it's like you sometimes you gotta face it. You have been a bad person, or you really you could have been better. And
Preaching to the
I think
choir here,
it's
man. Yeah.
yeah, it's good not to like dwell in it, but acknowledge the way you acted and make change for the future so you don't repeat the same mistakes. So I think
Sure.
life, if you keep spinning tires and being the same person and making the same
Yeah.
mistakes, you'll keep running into the same situations, and they might be with different people, but like the exact same situations will happen because you have
Mm-hmm.
not learned the lesson that life is trying to teach you.
True. And it's
Yeah,
interesting when you see people who are trying to run away from the problems by just leaving the place that they once were and just going to a new place,
yeah.
only to see it happening all over again. All right.
Hmm.
Yeah, I'm not sure. See, like on my end, I was just hanging out with some friends last night,
Yeah.
and I have a gift for making things awkward.
Yeah. I remember Uber ride. There was a few times.
Like, let's just take that deep dive. The reason I love the subtitle to this podcast is where small talk comes to die, and my sister is the one who suggested that.
That's
She
great.
knows me pretty well. But one of the things I had us all participate in our round group sort of dynamic,
Hmm.
and I did it intentionally for the following reasons, because I don't think we do this very often. But what I had us all do is I had us all say, list something that you really love about yourself in two ways. First, physically, and second, character-wise.
Hmm.
In my observation, I think a lot of us stumble and sort of like we are really good at coming up with things that we're struggling over, right? Whether it's our weight,
Yeah.
whether it's our behavior, or the way we're treated other people, or like so many ways that we're like, hey, I
Hmm.
got a good catalog of my negatives, right? Because we're wired to
Yeah.
think in terms of deficits, and of scarcity. But when it comes to being okay with the good elements as well too, I think a lot of us struggle that way, right? A lot of us struggle
Yeah.
because we're wired in this societal context not to go there, right? We're like, no, I got to put the brakes on that because that's illegitimate. I'm gonna be, they'll see me as if I'm boasting, or so there's
Hmm.
that disconnect, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And I wonder if there isn't that place in the dissolving of the ego where we can say, we're not puffed up in ourselves and saying, hey, we're all that, but we can actually legitimately say, here's what I do really well, and say it as a matter of fact, matter of factual presentation, saying, this is what I can attest to. So let me extend that
Hmm.
opportunity of awkwardness with my group of friends last night and bring it
Yes.
in this context and just put you on the spot and saying,
Yeah.
if I were to ask you, Jared, in the way you see yourself, what do you love about yourself physically? What do you think is your favorite physical feature of yourself?
Hmm.
And secondly, what is that thing about your character that you're like, I really, really, I'm thankful I have this?
Um, my favorite feature about myself would be my smile. And
Nice.
I think for most of my life, I hated my smile. But
Interesting.
yeah, when I started to love myself more, I started to like really like my smile a lot more.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah. And then my favorite like characteristic of myself, I'm glad I have, is being a very empathetic person.
Hmm.
So like I can really feel what others are going through when they tell me, and
Yeah.
and being able to relate to them and actually, be a helpful like friend or just a person to anyone. Like
Sure. Sure.
I take a lot of pride in like being there for other people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. Um, what is your primary mode of expressing yourself creatively?
Creatively.
Mm.
I kind of dress however I like. I definitely don't dress to the norm. I wear like short shorts and crop tops
Yep.
and like crazy colors and tie dye.
That, yep, I've seen all that.
Yeah, to most
And you do that
people,
on purpose.
yeah. Like I was actually at a festival like a year and a half ago. I bought a crop top because it was so warm and I couldn't wear a t-shirt. And all of a sudden, I was getting lots of compliments and lots of compliments from women. And I was like, okay, what's wrong with like men exposing their bodies? Like, so I just started what dressing in a way that I liked and I felt comfortable in.
Mhm.
Yeah, and it's interesting. A lot of people are uncomfortable with how the way I dress, and they will literally tell me that's like put on like some more clothes or something, or like dress appropriately. But I think that might be part of society's construct that like men have to dress a certain way and they can't express themselves, and it's interesting seeing that. And it's that like that has definitely made me like grow a thicker skin. Like, I don't really care what people think about me and
Mhm.
the way I dress, the way I act. It's like I am who I am, and I'm happy with who I am as a person.
It made me think of one of my heroes, one of them, Patch
Hmm.
Adams. I don't know if you ever watched that movie.
No.
My platform in the beginning was actually called Patch Adams 2, because I was really affected by the movie Patch Adams. Fantastic movie, by all means watch it. This doctor, he's actually a student doctor, so he's in school to become a doctor. He's really brilliant, but he's really creative, and he thinks outside of the lines. So you've got all these career professionals in pediatry who are like, this is the way it always goes. But he's like, well, why? Why don't you think outside the line to serve? And his big thing was, screw the business side, screw the economic side. There's people who are in those beds, right? So don't look at them
Hmm.
by their number, but look at them by their name and connect with them, because that's how you bring the best care to them, right? And he would dress up like a clown and walk through the hallways in the hospital and just make smiles and happiness wherever he went. And this is
Yeah.
so like unconventional and unorthodox in reference to the hospital's mandate. Like everything's got to be like, just decorum and all that kind of stuff. And
Yeah.
he's like, screw that, right? And so you're reminding me of him when you're saying, yeah, the way I dress, like I like to express myself through that. And then I was thinking, I wonder if that's not where you'll end up in the business world, where you walk into a business conference office, talk
Hmm.
about some big deals. Everyone's in their suits, and you walk in with your crop shirt, so guys, let's get down to business kind of thing.
Yeah, that's funny.
I usually end the podcast here by asking if you have any questions for me. I'm the one who's been grilling, and I have not made it easy
Hmm.
yet. So thank you for being willing to engage those very deep conversational questions. But let me give you an opportunity. Yeah, get back at me if you'd like by a question.
Um, I think one thing I'd want to just point out that I noticed about you, the first time when we were in a Uber ride, you
Yeah.
were telling me how you took a lot of schooling throughout your life, and for a
Mhm.
long time you kind of didn't really know exactly what your purpose was, and you were kind of always searching for it. And
Yeah.
then watching you on TikTok and Instagram and seeing you flourish with like meeting all these people and expanding your like social media platform, and just seeing how happy you are that way and seeing you connect with all these people, it's like I was thinking, I'm like, wow, Binyam has kind of found his passion and like purpose in life right now. Yeah.
This has been a meaningful engagement for me. When I first came on here, I came on here with a personal challenge to myself of saying I may have been a bit of a snob and saying I'm not doing what social media does in connecting with people with just likes and so on. Like that, you mentioned what likes play
Hmm.
has played by TikTok, right? My thing was how can I re-engage in social media? And the challenge would be how can I connect with people like we are doing here? Like this has not
Yeah.
been light and trivial, right? We're talking about some deep stuff.
Hmm.
And I see it reflected in my comments and even in my DMs as well. It's really heartwarming to see how people are wrestling with the right questions, the right thing. It's just, it makes me super grateful. And so the more I've seen the people resonating with what I'm putting out, it's not like I aimed to, like, I didn't think I'd arrive here the way I have, but I'm so thankful
Hmm.
I have. And I've made it a priority for me. Like this, for example, this podcast, talking with you during my lives, being available there,
Hmm.
it's almost like a priority for me now because I take my friendships extremely seriously, and I love seeing others flourish and develop and grow. And I like being on the sidelines, cheering them on, kind of thing.
Hmm.
So it's definitely become another priority in my life that I want to make time for because like I show my priorities in life by the time I give to them,
Yeah.
right? And it's important. And so I love that we have the scale to be able to share this with so many others who are probably like you were at one point spinning their wheels thinking, I wish there was some model I could see of what this could look like.
Yeah.
So I'm really, really encouraged by that too. Thank you for that observation. It's really kind of you to mention that.
Yeah. Of course. I'm happy for you, man.
I feel it. For our listeners and our viewers, where can they find you should they so desire to get in touch with you or follow you?
On Instagram at Jarod, JAYYROOOD. Yeah,
Is that three O's?
three O's. Yeah, two Y's, three
Okay.
O's.
No, I've always read it, but I guess I'm just omitting the one O.
Yeah.
That's on Instagram. Fantastic.
Yeah.
I am so delighted by our time together. It's not that I was concerned at all. Like you can see my page here is now full with like notes
Yeah.
and things writing along.
Hmm.
It's been really engaging. We've already had two rich rides together, and they've been wonderful. Our interaction, we're learning a lot about each other. But even this opportunity to have you on the podcast, Jared, has given me a lot more insights about you and how you tick. And I love that part about us as humans is that we're quite unpredictable and we continue to surprise. And
Hmm.
so,
Definitely.
yeah.
I'm glad you had me on your podcast.
Me too. Me too. Guys, this has been the Bincast where small talk comes to die. We've had Jared and so thrilled to have him as well. I appreciate your friendship as well. I look forward to hopefully catching you in the Uber once more. But thank you
Of
again for your
course.
kindness and for taking the time out.
Yeah, for sure.
I'll hopefully see you soon, okay?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll meet again.
For sure. Bye for now.
Bye bye. See ya.